Hey guys, welcome to Brian's Man Cave. So today I'm going to do another flick picks, and this is one I've been wanting to do for a while now. It's a movie that I continuously revisit every once in a while. I just can't stop watching this movie, and that is, well, Young Guns. And the other movie I'm doing a 2 for is Young Guns 2. Now the reason why I'm doing both of them together is because it kind of to me feels like it's one big movie. The second one being that it really does take off kind of after the first one, what you would expect from a sequel. Now the interesting thing is, when I first saw Young Guns myself, back in that it came out like 88, 89, somewhere around there. I remember watching it thinking this was just a fictional cowboy movie. It had Billy the Kid in it. It was just, a lot of fun, a lot of shooting up, a lot of characters and stuff. And then I started to find out, do a little bit of research, and found out that it actually was based on, real things that happened, and this is actually the kind of life that Billy the Kid sort of lived. And I was kind of impressed. I didn't realize that. And it's kind of like when I first watched Tombstone, and I've done a flick picks on Tombstone before, because that's the other movie that I watch all the time. These are probably my favorite westerns of the western genre that I watch anyways. And it was the same thing. When I first saw Tombstone, I just thought it was a made-up cowboy movie, and it was really good. And then I started to do some research, and realizing that it's based on real people. Wyatt Earp was real. Doc Holliday was real. I didn't know that at the time. I mean, you gotta think this is like the 80s, 80s, 90s. We didn't have access to the internet like we do today. You actually had to go down to the library most of the time and look this stuff up. And that was what I started doing. I was actually looking up some of the cowboy stuff in the libraries, and I'm like, holy crap, this stuff really happened. Nowadays we have the internet, and we can Google this stuff in seconds. And so I've been doing that. I watch these films every once in a while, and I like to go back and actually read about the real people and see where the film is different from reality. And much like in Tombstone, where they take a lot of reality, like a lot of stuff that actually happened, and then they kind of add in a bunch of fictional stuff and sometimes twist around and change some of the facts. That kind of happened in this movie. Both these movies. And the other thing that was interesting was after I saw Young Guns, and then Young Guns 2 came out around 1992, I think, 91, 92. I thought, I didn't piece it together at the time, and I really thought that Young Guns 2 was completely fictional, and that it was supposed to be taking place after Billy the Kid's death, when Billy the Kid actually didn't die, and all this adventure had happened. And I don't know why I didn't piece it together, that this was actually, Young Guns 2, actually is just a continuation of the first Young Guns when Billy the Kid was actually still alive, and what led up to the death that we all know. And the second one being that Pat Garrett, the guy that shot Billy the Kid, at least history says that Pat Garrett shot Billy the Kid. That's where this second movie comes in. I like the first one better, though. I really enjoyed the first Young Guns. I think they put a lot of work into it to make it as authentic as they could. They twisted some things around. I mean, John Tunstall, the person who's kind of has the regulators working for him, and that's what he calls the squad of people. And that's where Billy the Kid is, and Charlie Baudry, and Chavez E. Chavez. All the main characters, Doc Scurlock, they all work for John Tunstall. And they're supposed to be guys that he pulled off the streets, being, they're kind of rough around the edges, and he's trying to educate them. Now, they took some liberty to kind of change John Tunstall, and I've read that it often happened in a lot of movies that came out where they portray him as this older, sophisticated gentleman, when actually he was, in real life, only about 24, 25, somewhere in there, and he was pretty much the same age as the regulators that he had hired. Some of them were even older than him. But that didn't matter. I mean, he owned the ranch, he hired them, he paid them. And, of course, the Young Guns movie is pretty much all about the murder of John Tunstall and how the regulators go after Murphy, who's played by Jack Palance, who is also a real character, a real person, and just going after his men and trying to, almost like get payback for what had happened, the murder of Tunstall. Now, they do take some other liberties, as Hollywood would always do, and changing some of the other characters as well. One notably is Lou Diamond Phillips' character, Chavez E. Chavez, who he portrays as a Mexican Indian. And from what I've read, the actual Chavez was just Mexican. So they changed a little bit of that. And because of that, they had to add in a lot of backstory that obviously was not real. There's a lot of talk about his Indian side and his reservation that he came from and how they were all murdered. So obviously all of that didn't happen. I mean, it could be based off of somebody else. I didn't read anything about that, but I mean, it's always possible. But from what I understand, a lot of his backstory is made up. And of course, there's Billy the Kid himself, which they portrayed. I think they did a pretty good job. I mean, from what I've read, Emilio Estevez did, carry the part well. There was a few things, obviously, that they pointed out that, for instance, one of the things I liked is that they kept portraying him as a left-handed gunfighter. When they were reading the magazines and they were reading about, throughout the movie, as they are going through and killing off Murphy's men, they're reading about themselves, and of course his name Billy the Kid gets created, and they keep saying in the writings that he's a left-handed shooter, he's a left-handed, and I think it's mentioned like 3 times where they're reading about him being left-handed. And there is a scene at the, there's this, I don't know where they are. They're like literally in the middle of the desert, and Billy the Kid is holding a book called Billy the Kid, and it's got a picture. Actually, I noticed it. It was a picture of the real Billy the Kid on the cover, and he reads a passage again saying that he was left-handed, and this is a joke. I mean, they're doing this as a joke because I don't think people then believed he was left-handed, but it all came down to the most famous picture of Billy the Kid. In fact, I think it's the only undisputed picture of Billy the Kid that exists, and for the longest time, scholars and people that made movies and writings on him based everything off that photo, well, tintype, and they didn't take into account that when these things were taken, the image was actually a mirror image. So it was actually Billy the Kid, but as if he was in the mirror. And so he was actually right-handed, but his gun, because it's a mirror image, was on the left-hand side, and so it was factually incorrect when people were writing that he was left-handed. And I like how they included that in the movie, almost kind of making a joke on how we just didn't think about the fact that that photo was reversed. And so a lot of, probably Hollywood and writings and stuff before Young Guns, well, maybe even, I'm sure other portrayals, they straightened it out, thought he was a left-handed. But that's just a small little thing. I don't know if they really portrayed too much of his personality. I think Emilio Estevez kind of got the impression that Billy the Kid would have goofed off a lot. I don't know if that was true, if he was, laughing and giggling like he was and as crazy as he was. The other thing is, the interesting thing is when you get into Young Guns 2, and like I was, thinking like, and the fact that I thought that this entire movie was fictional until I realized it wasn't. They bring in the character of Brushy Bill Roberts, who he actually existed, and he's in the beginning of the movie, and he's portraying himself as I am Billy the Kid. And this is like now in the 1950s. He's really old. He's, he looks like he's been through hell and back, and he's trying to get a pardon from the government, saying, I'm Billy the Kid, I killed 20 men, I want a pardon. And of course nobody's going to believe him. And this actually did happen. I thought this was made up for the movie, but looking into it, apparently it happened. This guy, Brushy Bill, came out of wherever and was claiming to be Billy the Kid. Now, there's a lot of dispute about it, and I believe they've debunked it, saying that he actually wasn't Billy the Kid, and that he just portrayed himself, or he just thought he was Billy the Kid, or maybe he was trying to scam people. I don't know. But it's interesting nonetheless that, this actually happened, and the way they put him in the movie is that he has a lot of history, and he claims he's got scars and stuff that he can prove that he's Billy the Kid. And, of course, the movie takes off with him telling the story of what happened after the Lincoln County War, which is exactly what I was saying, where the two movies are kind of connected. But at this point, the regulators are all disbanded. But they all make a comeback into this movie. So you got Emilio Estevez back as Billy the Kid. You got Kiefer Sutherland back as Doc Scurlock. Unfortunately, there's a few characters that they prematurely killed off in the first one that can't make a comeback. So they have to change history around at this point. For instance, I don't believe Dick Brewer was supposed to die in the first one, and he did, by Buckshot Roberts. Is it Buckshot Roberts? I always screw up his name. Which actually was also, popular, historical fact that they had a gunfight with that Buckshot guy in the first movie. So in the second one, some of the characters that were supposed to be alive are prematurely dead. But they also kill off a few other characters in the second one that should have never died as well. They kill off Lou Diamond Phillips' character, Chavez E. Chavez. He never died. He actually went on and lived his life. Doc Scurlock never died in real life. He lived to an old age. So it's interesting that they took these liberties and said, okay, we're just going to kill them all off. And the one that should have died in real life actually didn't die, and that was Billy the Kid. So it's kind of like they look at it and they kind of flipped it around. And of course, this leaves it out to the open of, did Billy the Kid survive? And I was looking at it, it was kind of fun doing some research, just checking out different writings and different videos and stuff like that of people trying to say, yes, he survived, no, he didn't survive. Some people believed that that Brushy Bill actually was Billy the Kid, and he wouldn't have been able to fake that kind of thing. But as I was kind of watching a few other videos and reading some comments, I actually did come across someone who did raise a really good point, and that is, if Billy the Kid did die, where did all his stuff go? I mean, the actual story of Billy the Kid, when he was shot by Pat Garrett, apparently he was taken out, he was put on display for a bunch of people that knew him, and then they buried him, and that was the end of it. There's actually a marker there where he was buried. But the question remains, where did his stuff go? He would have had a hat, he would have had his jacket, he would have had boots, he would have had guns. Where did all that stuff go? Chances are they didn't just bury it all in there. I mean, they could, but it just seems awkward. And why was there no death photos? Now, that was something that was constantly done back in the past when people were killed, especially big outlaw people like Jesse James, who, when he was killed, they did take pictures of him, his body laying there. And that was, I guess, for proof or whatever. They wanted to have something for history. And but that never happened with Billy the Kid. Why not? Why was he just thrown into a ditch and that's it? So there is some kind of fun history there that we kind of want to say, well, what if he did survive? What if he did move on? But even then, even if he did survive, even if Brushy Bill was him, again, where's his stuff? Where's his guns? Where's his hat? That famous photo of him, all that stuff he was wearing, where is all that stuff? Maybe it was just pillaged. People just randomly grabbed things, but you would think something of that historical importance would have been passed down. Like, this was Billy the Kid's gun. And maybe it is. Maybe some family members have passed things down and they've kept quiet about it, or they have no evidence to prove that it really was Billy the Kid. But anyways, yeah, there's a lot going on in these movies. I definitely like the first one better than the second one, even though it does pick up after the first one and they kind of band back together. They had a new character in the second one, which again was a real person, and that was, they call him Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh, but his real name was actually just Dave Rudabaugh. The Arkansas part, I've read that it's not actual fact that he called himself that, or anybody ever called him that. So I guess they just wanted to add something to the movie. And he's played by Christian Slater. He's an interesting character because he seems to he's trying to rival Billy the Kid, and throughout the movie he wants to be famous. He wants people to know who he is, and from what I've read, that really wasn't his personality either. So Christian Slater took the character to a different level. I think they just wanted to have that kind of, something that Billy the Kid would have to deal with throughout the movie, rather than just having another, person that's willing to work with him. And the interesting thing is that when I read about Dave Rudabaugh, he actually had something to do with Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday, and for them actually meeting in real life. And so he did cross paths with the people of Tombstone. And so I didn't even know that there was a connection between, you know, the Tombstone, you know, the events of Tombstone and the events of Young Gun. Even though I've loved both movies, I didn't know. I completely thought that, you know, Billy the Kid and all the people that ran with him would have never crossed paths with people like Wyatt Earp. But there actually was a small connection, and that was Dave Rudabaugh. So it's kind of interesting. You know, and I just learned about that not long ago, just doing a little bit of research on who actually was Dave Rudabaugh. Anyways, yeah, that was just my little 2 cents about those movies. Really great flicks. There's a lot of scenes in it that are a little bit over the edge. You know, obviously you can tell where they've made things up just to make the movie go a little bit more pleasing. But I think it's fun to just watch the movie and then go and learn about the real Billy the Kid, learn about the real, you know, people that ran with him. And the same thing with Tombstone. Watch the movie and then go and learn about it and see where they've just changed little bits of history here and there just to make the movie more appealing. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Let me know what you think. If you watch Young Guns, if you like the movies, what's your favorite? You watch Tombstone, what's your favorite Western? If you like Westerns, leave it all down below. I always like to read the comments. Hope you liked the video. Hope you subscribe. Talk to you later.